They all saw the crown on my head, but no one ever looked into my heart. I was the daughter of Saul, the king everyone feared, but fear doesn't build a home, and titles don't hold you when you cry at night. From the outside, I had everything: palaces, prestige, the name. But on the inside, I was just a girl who fell too hard for a man who never truly looked back. His name was David. Brave, beautiful, chosen by the people, and eventually by God. And I loved him before I even knew what love would cost. It started with music, his harp, his voice, his presence calmed my father's storms. But David never saw me the way I saw him. Not then. Maybe not ever. The day I realized I loved him, he wasn't wearing armor. He was just standing in the corner of the palace courtyard, sweaty from battle, smiling like he didn't know how dangerous the world really was. I watched him from the window, heart pounding like I was the one returning from war. I didn't choose to love David. Love chose me. And I thought, naively, that being a princess meant I could have what I wanted. My father knew. He saw it in my eyes. So he used it. Love became a weapon in the hands of the man who gave me life. Saul promised me to David, not because he wanted my happiness, but because he wanted to control him. I was the pawn in a royal game I didn't even know how to play. But David didn't fight for me the way I expected. Not at first. My father demanded a bride price of 100 Philistine foreskins. David brought 200. That should have been romantic, right? That should have told me I mattered. But it wasn't love. It was strategy. I was a reward. A trophy. A transaction between two men who didn't really see me. I smiled at the wedding, of course. I wore white, I laughed when they toasted, and I said all the right words. But deep down, I wondered if David even knew the color of my eyes. He kissed me, yes. But he never kissed my soul. The days that followed were strange. I was married to a man who was always looking over his shoulder. My father hated him. The kingdom whispered. And I was trapped between loyalty and love. When Saul sent soldiers to kill David in our home, I helped him escape. I covered for him. Lied to my father. Protected the man I loved at the risk of my own life. And you'd think David would remember that. You'd think that would mean something. But when he left that night, running into the wilderness, he didn't take me with him. Not even a goodbye. Just silence. Just the wind and the door closing behind him. Days turned into months. Months into years. I heard nothing from David. No letters. No secret messengers. Just silence. And then, he married someone else. Then another. And another. I heard their names in court gossip, saw their faces in my dreams, but still, I waited. I waited like a fool in a castle built on old memories. My father, in his rage and drunken pride, gave me to another man, Palti. Kind. Gentle. The kind of man who looked at me and really saw me. But I wasn't whole anymore. My heart was still in the wilderness with the man who forgot me. Palti never touched me. Not once. He held my hand in public, yes. But in private, he sat on the far side of the room, reading scrolls and writing poetry he never shared. I think he knew he could never be the man I wanted. Or maybe he didn't want to compete with a ghost. For years, we lived in this strange, quiet coexistence. And just when I thought peace had finally settled in my bones, David came back, not for me, but for the throne. And with the throne came me. Reclaiming me wasn't about love. It was about power. About optics. About politics. The journey back to David was the most painful walk of my life. Palti followed me, weeping. Sobbing like a man who had lost more than a wife. He cried not just for love lost, but for the fact that no one cared what I wanted. No one asked if I wanted to go back. I looked over my shoulder, watched Palti fall to his knees, and I felt nothing. I had nothing left to give. David was king now. I was just another piece on his board. The woman who loved him first, returned to him last. I should have felt honored. Instead, I felt invisible. He didn't greet me with joy. He didn't hold me. He didn't ask how I had survived all those years. No, David had changed. There was a fire in him now, a hunger for destiny that left no room for intimacy. I was his wife in name, but not in presence. The palace was filled with other women, other children, other voices calling him my love. And I, once a princess, once a first wife, had become background noise. Sometimes I wondered if he even remembered the girl who saved his life. The girl who risked everything for him. The girl who once thought love could conquer anything. I tried to reclaim his attention. I wore the finest linens, practiced smiling in the mirror, whispered soft prayers at night. But he only had eyes for God, and for public praise. The day the ark returned to Jerusalem, David danced like a madman. Robes flying, sweat dripping, spinning in front of the servants, the girls, the crowds. And something inside me snapped. I wasn't jealous of God. I was grieving the David I used to know. The David who once hid in shadows and wrote psalms to calm my father. That day, I watched my husband dance for a nation, but never for me. I said something I shouldn't have. I mocked him. I told him kings shouldn't behave like fools in the streets. And he looked at me like I was nothing. He defended his joy before God, but never once defended me. That night, I knew. I had lost him for good. Not to another woman. Not to a battlefield. But to purpose. To calling. To something bigger than me. And while the kingdom sang and worshipped, I mourned something no one else could see. The death of a dream, the final thread of a love I had carried far too long. In the silence that followed, I stopped pretending. I stopped trying to be the woman David needed, or the daughter Saul shaped, or the queen the kingdom expected. I started listening to my own soul, the parts of me I had buried beneath crowns and costumes. The truth was, I had loved deeply, and I had lost deeply. And yet, I still existed. I still breathed. Sometimes healing doesn't come through answers, but through acceptance. Maybe David never chose me fully. But maybe that didn't mean I was unworthy. Maybe love unreturned doesn't make a heart any less holy. I began to talk to God again, not as a wife, or a princess, or a broken woman, but as Michal. Just Michal. The girl who once danced in secret gardens before she knew the word betrayal. I asked him why love had cost me so much. Why being loyal had led me to loneliness. And though the sky stayed quiet, I felt something shift. Not outside me, but within. For the first time, I allowed myself to mourn the life I thought I'd have. And then, I released it. I let it fall from my hands like ash. And in that release, I finally felt peace. You see, not every story in Scripture ends in a miracle or reunion or redemption wrapped in gold. Some stories end in silence, in stillness, in quiet surrender. And still, they matter. My diary may never be read with the same awe as Esther's or Ruth's. But I lived. I felt. I gave love even when it wasn't returned. And that makes my story sacred too. For every woman who's loved someone who couldn't love her back, for every soul who gave everything and received so little, I want you to know, your love wasn't wasted. Your devotion wasn't invisible to God. I had no children. No legacy etched in royal blood. No son to carry my name. But sometimes the deepest legacies are invisible. Maybe mine is for the women who love quietly, hurt privately, and still choose to rise. I don't regret loving David. What I regret is forgetting to love myself along the way. For too long, I let my worth be measured by the way a man looked at me, or didn't. But now, in the stillness of my soul, I am starting to see myself as God always did. Enough, even in the absence of applause. Sometimes I walk through the old gardens alone. The ones David never visited. The ones where I used to dream of a different kind of marriage, a different kind of kingdom. And though the dreams have faded, the flowers still bloom. Life continues. Seasons change. And so do hearts. I am not the girl who once waited at the window. I am not the wife who cried at the door. I am not the princess who gave her heart away too fast. I am Michal. Not perfect. Not praised. But seen by the one who matters most. I have learned that loyalty is not weakness. That tenderness is not a flaw. That sometimes, the ones who feel too deeply carry the holiest parts of God's image. I am learning to be proud of my softness. Of my courage to love, even when it broke me. I have stopped waiting for someone else to write my ending. My story may not have a fairy tale conclusion, but it has truth. And truth is its own kind of beauty. Maybe the greatest redemption isn't being chosen again, but choosing yourself after being forgotten. I don't know if David ever thought of me again. I don't know if he ever walked past my room and paused. But I've stopped wondering. I've stopped needing the answer. Because closure isn't something someone gives you, it's something you give yourself. And I have. I've forgiven the silence. I've made peace with the absence. I've stopped writing love letters to people who never knew how to read my heart. And maybe that's what healing looks like. Not erasing the past, but no longer needing it to validate your worth. If you're listening to this, and you've been where I've been, torn between who you love and who you are, hear me now, your voice matters. Your tears were not wasted. Your loyalty is not a weakness. You are not invisible. Not to the one who created you. Not to the God who sees every whispered prayer, every silent ache, every brave little choice to keep going. You don't need a palace or a title to be worthy of love. You already are. You always were. Even if the world never applauds you, heaven already knows your name. And if no one has told you this, you are enough. You, with your bruised heart and quiet strength. You, with your history and your healing. You are not defined by who stayed or who left, by who chose you or who didn't. You are defined by the one who never walked away. And he still sees you. Still loves you. Still calls you his. This is not the end of your story. Maybe it's the beginning of a new kind of love, the kind that starts not with someone else's eyes, but with your own reflection, finally seen through grace. So I close this diary not in sorrow, but in release. I release the past. I release the pressure. I release the girl I once was. And I rise, not as a queen in name, but as a woman in truth. May my story be a mirror for yours. And if you felt seen in these words, stay a while. There are other voices, other diaries, other sacred stories waiting for you here.
If this spoke to your soul, consider subscribing to Biblical Stories for more journeys like this. Your story matters, and we're here to tell it.